A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. You are walking down a quiet country road. Maybe the sun is setting, and the only sound is the gravel crunching under your boots. Suddenly, from behind a rusted gate or out of a thicket of trees, you hear that low, rhythmic growl. Then comes the bark. Not the, "Hey, a friend is here" bark, but that chest-thumping, territorial warning. Most of us have felt that cold spike of adrenaline. Your heart rate triples, your palms get sweaty, and every primal instinct you have is screaming at you to turn around and bolt as fast as your legs will carry you.
That instinct, while perfectly natural, is exactly what gets people into trouble. Today's prompt from Daniel is about the actual science-backed protocols for encountering aggressive or dangerous dogs. He wants us to look at the mechanics of these interactions, whether you are walking, cycling, or, most critically, protecting a child. It is a topic that sits right at the intersection of animal behavior and human psychology. By the way, today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 3 Flash.
It is a necessary intersection to explore, Herman, because I think most people believe they know what to do, but their knowledge is usually a mix of old wives' tales and cartoon logic. We treat dogs like furry little humans, but when a dog is in a high arousal defensive state, the rules of human social engagement don't just stop working. They actually become counterproductive.
That is the core of the problem. We are dealing with a species that has been co-evolving with us for tens of thousands of years, yet we still fundamentally misread their intent. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, roughly 4.5 million dog bites occur annually in the United States. Now, while that sounds like a massive number, the vast majority of those are preventable if the human involved understands the sequence of escalation. In rural areas where leash laws are essentially non-existent and property lines are defended by working breeds, the incidence rates are significantly higher than in urban centers.
So we aren't being alarmist here. We are talking about high-stakes communication. If a dog is charging you, it is communicating. The question is, are you speaking the same language? I want to dive straight into the why. Before we get to the how, why is my instinct to run the absolute worst thing I can do?
It comes down to something called predatory drift. This is a well-documented phenomenon in canine behavior. When a dog is in a state of high arousal, whether that is fear, territorial defense, or aggression, and they see a target move rapidly away from them, it can flip a switch in their brain. They move from territorial guardian to predator on the hunt. A 2023 study from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine analyzed over 400 bite incidents. They found that 72% of those cases involved victims who were either running, cycling, or making sudden, jerky movements.
72%. That is not a coincidence, that is a biological trigger. So, by running, I am essentially volunteering to be the chew toy in a game of tag I am guaranteed to lose.
You cannot outrun them, and the act of trying confirms to the dog that you are prey. When you run, the dog's amygdala takes over. The chase is self-reinforcing. The adrenaline the dog feels during the pursuit actually makes them more likely to bite once they catch up. It is a feedback loop where the movement of the victim provides the fuel for the dog's aggression.
Okay, so let's talk about the correct protocol for a stationary encounter. I am on that road, the dog is 20 feet away, it is barking, hair is standing up on its back. I am not running. What am I doing instead?
You are becoming the most boring thing in the world. This is often called the tree method or the be a tree protocol. Step 1, you stop. You do not move toward the dog and you do not move away. Step 2, you turn your body sideways. In the canine world, a front-facing, squared-off posture is an aggressive challenge. By turning your shoulder toward the dog, you are signaling non-aggression. You are saying, I am not a threat, and I am not interested in your territory.
What about eye contact? I have heard people say you should stare them down to show dominance, and I have heard others say you should look away. Which is it?
Staring them down is a catastrophic mistake. To an aggressive dog, direct, unblinking eye contact is a declaration of war. It is a challenge for top dog status. Instead, you want to use soft eyes. You look at the ground or off to the side, but you keep the dog in your peripheral vision. You need to know where it is, but you don't want to lock eyes.
So I am standing still, I am sideways, and I am looking at a very interesting patch of gravel. My hands? I assume I shouldn't be waving them around or reaching out to let the dog smell me?
Do not reach out. That is another huge misconception. People think that putting a hand out is a peace offering. To a stressed dog, that hand is a weapon entering their personal space. Keep your hands folded in front of you or down at your sides, but keep them still. If you are wearing a jacket or carrying a bag, you can use that as a passive barrier, but don't swing it. You want to be a statue.
It sounds simple, but I imagine when a 100-pound German Shepherd is snarling 3 feet from your knees, being a tree feels like the hardest thing in the world. Does this actually work for defensive aggression?
It works because it de-escalates the dog's internal threat meter. If you aren't moving, the dog's predatory drive doesn't kick in. If you aren't facing them or staring, their defensive drive starts to ebb. Most dogs don't actually want to fight. They want you to leave their space. By standing still and being boring, you are giving the dog the opportunity to realize that the threat is stationary and harmless. Eventually, the dog will often settle into a watch and bark phase and then eventually lose interest or wait for its owner.
You mentioned defensive versus offensive aggression earlier. How do I tell the difference? Because my reaction might need to shift if the dog isn't just defending a yard but is actually hunting.
That is a crucial distinction. Defensive aggression is usually characterized by a low and loud profile. The dog's ears are back, its tail might be tucked or wagging stiffly and low, and it is making a lot of noise. It wants to create distance. Offensive aggression is quieter and upward. The ears are forward, the tail is held high and stiff, and the dog is leaning into its front legs. This dog is looking to close distance. The be a tree protocol is still your best bet initially for both, because movement escalates both types. However, with offensive aggression, you have to be much more prepared to use a physical barrier.
Let's talk about those barriers. If I have a backpack, a bicycle, or even an umbrella, how do I use those without swinging them like a club and making things worse?
Think of them as space makers, not weapons. If you have an umbrella, opening it toward the dog is an incredible deterrent. It creates a sudden, large physical barrier that the dog doesn't understand. If you have a backpack, you don't swing it, you hold it out in front of your legs. If the dog bites, you want it biting the nylon and foam of the bag, not your calf muscle.
And what about the bike? Daniel mentioned cycling specifically. I've been chased on a bike before, and let me tell you, trying to outpedal a farm dog on an uphill stretch is a great way to meet your maker.
Cycling is a unique trigger because of the high-speed spinning of the wheels and the legs. It is like a giant cat toy for a dog. The protocol for cyclists is very specific. Stop. Dismount. Put the bike between you and the dog.
Wait, I should stop? That feels so counterintuitive. My whole goal is to get away.
If you keep pedaling, you are maintaining that predator-prey chase dynamic. By stopping and dismounting, you instantly break the chase spell. Now, you are just a person standing with a large metal object. Use the bike as a shield. Walk slowly, keeping the bike between your body and the dog until you are out of its territory. If the dog circles, you pivot the bike. It provides a physical wall that the dog has to try and get around, which gives you time to think and react.
I can see how that works. The bike is basically a portable fence at that point. But let's get to the most stressful scenario Daniel raised, protecting a child. If I am walking with my nephew, or if Daniel is out with Ezra and a dog approaches aggressively, the be a tree method seems a bit more complicated when you have a small, unpredictable human involved.
This is where the protocol becomes a multi-step process. If the child is small enough, the very first thing you do is pick them up. But, and this is vital, you do it calmly. Do not scream, do not snatch them up with a jerk. You want to minimize the prey-like movements.
Why pick them up? Doesn't that make you more of a target?
Children are vulnerable for two reasons, their size and their behavior. They are at eye level with the dog, and they are prone to making high-pitched noises and sudden movements, all of which are massive triggers for a dog in high arousal. By picking them up, you remove the small, fast-moving target from the dog's immediate line of sight. It also puts the child's face and neck out of reach.
Okay, I have the kid in my arms. Now what? I am still facing a dog that thinks I am an intruder.
You follow the same boring protocol. You turn sideways, shielding the child with your body. Do not let the child scream if you can help it. Calmly tell them to be a statue. If the dog approaches, you are the barrier. You keep your back or side to the dog, keeping the child on the safe side of your torso.
What if you have two kids, or a kid who is too heavy to pick up?
Then you use the sandwich method. You place the child behind you and instruct them to hold onto your belt or your pockets and stay perfectly still. You become the shield. You are essentially telling the dog, to get to the small interesting thing, you have to go through the big, boring, vertical thing. Most dogs will not escalate to that level if you remain calm and stationary.
I think a lot of people's panic comes from the noise. A barking dog is loud, it is scary, and it feels like an attack is imminent. But you are saying that in most cases, the noise is actually a good sign?
In a sense, yes. A dog that is barking is a dog that is trying to handle the situation with communication rather than teeth. It is the silent dog, the one that is low to the ground, ears pinned, tail dead still, and trotting toward you with purpose. That is the real danger. That dog has already decided to bypass the warning phase.
That is terrifying. If you encounter the silent trotter, does the protocol change?
It becomes more about preparing for impact while still trying to avoid the trigger. You still don't run. If you run, you are definitely getting bitten. You stand your ground, you use whatever barrier you have, and you prepare to feed the dog something that isn't you. If you have a bag, a hat, or a shoe, you hold it out. If the dog is going to strike, you want it to strike an object. This is called redirecting the bite.
I remember reading a study, I think it was from the CDC, about urban versus rural encounters. In urban areas, most bites happen because of leash frustration or redirected aggression when an owner tries to break up a dog fight. But in rural areas, it is almost always territorial. Does the be a tree method work better in one than the other?
It is actually more effective in rural territorial encounters. In those cases, the dog has a very clear goal: get the human off the property. Once you show that you are leaving, slowly, calmly, and without challenge, the dog's motivation drops. Urban bites are often more chaotic because the dog might be overstimulated by noise, traffic, and other dogs, but the biological triggers remain the same.
We have talked a lot about what to do during the encounter. What about the immediate aftermath? Let's say the dog finally backs off, or the owner comes out and grabs it. You're shaking, your adrenaline is through the roof. What is the protocol then?
First, do not turn your back and run the second the dog moves away. Back away slowly. Keep your eyes in its general direction until there is a significant distance or a physical barrier like a fence or a car between you. Once you are safe, you need to do a self-assessment. Adrenaline is a powerful painkiller. People often don't realize they have been nipped or scratched until 10 minutes later when the fight or flight wears off.
And if there is a bite, even a small one, it is a medical issue immediately, right? Because of the infection risk.
Dog mouths are not cleaner than human mouths. That is another myth. They carry a host of bacteria, including Pasteurella, which can cause serious infections very quickly. If the skin is broken, you wash it with soap and water immediately and get to an urgent care. And from a public safety standpoint, you have to report it. Not because you want to punish the dog, but because there needs to be a record of the animal's behavior and vaccination status. Rabies is rare in domestic dogs in the West, but it is not non-existent, and the treatment protocol for rabies is something you want to start sooner rather than later if there is any doubt.
It is a heavy topic, but it is one of those things where having a mental script can literally save your life or your kid's life. It is like a fire drill. You don't want to have to think about what to do when the room is on fire. You want to just execute the plan.
That is why I love Daniel's prompt. It is about replacing panic with a protocol. If you can memorize 3 things, stop, turn, and be boring, you have already reduced your risk of a serious injury by an order of magnitude.
I think what's interesting is how this connects back to our previous discussions on survival psychology. We talked about that 90-second window where your brain either locks into a useful pattern or dissolves into chaos. In a dog encounter, that window is even shorter. It is probably more like 5 seconds.
It is. And the boring protocol is actually a way of hacking your own nervous system. When you force your body to stand still and turn sideways, you are sending signals back to your own brain that you are in control. It helps suppress the urge to scream or bolt, which in turn keeps the dog calmer. It is a feedback loop.
I want to go back to the cycling thing for a second, because I think cyclists are particularly prone to hero syndrome or panic syndrome. You see a dog, you think, I can outsprint this guy, and you shift into your big ring and hammer. But you mentioned the cat toy effect. Is there a specific distance where you should make the call to stop?
If the dog is already on a collision course with you, the time to stop was 5 seconds ago. A dog can hit 30 miles per hour in a heartbeat. Unless you are a professional sprinter on a downhill grade, you aren't winning that race. The second you see a dog break into a run towards you, that is your signal to slow down and prepare to dismount. If you wait until it is nipping at your heels, you are going to crash your bike and be on the ground in a vulnerable position.
Right, because a fall makes you a wounded prey target. That is even worse. So, dismount early, keep the bike as a shield, and walk. It might take you 5 minutes longer to get home, but you get home with all your skin attached.
And you don't escalate the dog for the next cyclist who comes along. That is the other part of this. When we react poorly, we are training. The dog that chasing humans is a high arousal, rewarding activity. We are making the road more dangerous for everyone else.
That is a great point. It is a community safety issue. Speaking of community, Daniel mentioned the balance between owner responsibility and public safety. It is a tough one, especially in rural areas where dogs are often seen as tools or security systems rather than pets.
It is a complex social engineering problem. We want the freedom to have our animals, but we have a responsibility to ensure they aren't a menace to people just using public thoroughfares. Leash laws exist for a reason, but in their absence, the burden of knowledge shifts to the pedestrian. It shouldn't be that way, but practically speaking, it is.
It is like defensive driving. You can be right and still be dead. I would rather be wrong about whether a dog is actually dangerous and use the protocol than be right that it should be on a leash while I am getting a tetanus shot.
That is the perfect way to look at it. The protocol is your defensive driving for the sidewalk. You are assuming every off-leash high-arousal dog is a potential threat until proven otherwise, and you are acting accordingly to minimize the energy in the interaction.
I think we've covered the core of it. Stop, turn sideways, avoid eye contact, pick up small kids calmly, use barriers like bikes or bags, and never ever run. It is a simple list, but in the heat of the moment, it is everything.
And if you find yourself in a situation where a dog actually latches on, which is the absolute worst case scenario, the protocol shifts to don't pull away. Pulling away causes tearing. You have to stay as still as possible and wait for help or look for a way to incapacitate the dog's breathing or vision. But again, the tree method prevents that from happening in the vast majority of cases.
Let's hope nobody listening ever has to get to that stage. This has been a really substantive deep dive into something that everyone thinks about, but few people actually prepare for. Thanks for the research on this, Herman. I know you have been digging through those veterinary journals all morning.
It is fascinating stuff. The more you understand about how a dog perceives the world, the less scary they become, because their actions become predictable. They aren't monsters, they are just animals following a very specific biological script. If you know the script, you can write a better ending.
Well said. I think we can wrap it there. Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping the wheels on the bus. And a huge thank you to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the generation of this show.
If you found this episode helpful, and I hope you did, consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It actually makes a huge difference in helping other people find these protocols.
This has been My Weird Prompts. We will be back soon with more of Daniel's weird, wonderful, and occasionally life-saving questions.
Stay safe out there.
And remember, be a tree. See ya. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash. Text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from sloth